I was asked, would I like to sit down and have a chat with you about your uncle? But I did a bit of research on you earlier today, and you've led a very interesting life, and that's been all about planes. And that feels like that does relate to your uncle's background. So I wonder if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your experience with the RAF and the USAF and your travels abroad.
Yes, well, not surprisingly, 100 years ago, my uncle flew across the Atlantic. He had one sister and three other brothers, and the nearest brother to Sir John was my dad, Edward. He was inspired by Sir John. He died very, very early on in life, just 6 months after he flew across the Atlantic. But my father was so inspired that he joined the Air Force in 1920 and became instructor pilot. And in 1929, he was ordered by the Air Ministry to join Imperial Airways. And the reasons for that, they wanted 12 pilots, top pilots, to expand global airline aviation. And my father was involved in setting up air routes from the UK to South Africa, to Egypt and to India, proving firstly with mail and then passenger service. And then in the war, he ended up loving flying boats and started to become a top flying boat man. He won a Queen's Commendation for evacuating Crete in World War II. And in fact, at the age of 9, he took me airborne, and that was the first aircraft I ever flew. Was a Sunderland flying boat. I was grown up in an aviation family, and it wasn't surprising that I too had got the buzz for flying. And at 16, I became a member of the Air Training Corps, and I recommend all young people, if they're interested in flying, is to join your local Air Training Corps, because that corps allowed me to become a glider pilot at 16, and at 17, I was awarded a flying scholarship, and I spent a month at Fair Oaks Flying Club in Surrey, and I qualified for a private pilot license. I then joined the Air Force at 19, purely to fly the English Electric Lightning, which is a Mach 2 aircraft, a new air defence aircraft. And by 22, I was flying the Lightning operationally. And then after that, I specialised in air defence flying, and I had 3 tours on Lightnings, eventually ending up on exchange duties in America with the USAF flying Phantoms, where I was an instructor pilot. Flying was fun, but I found it a challenge as well, because it's a wonderful environment, and if you haven't flown before, it's really a terrific environment to make a career in life. And I served, in the end, 35 years in the RAF, and I retired in 1999.
And you served in Iraq and the Falklands. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was responsible for the British forces who were air policing northern Iraq at the time of the Operation Warden, where we had to keep control over the Iraqi Air Force. And I was stationed in Turkey, and I was commander of British forces operating over Iraq. A 6-month tour. It was thoroughly operational. We were flying armed aircraft in Iraq. We had strict rules of engagement, and we kept the Iraqis from flying. Later on in my career, I became deputy commander of British forces in the Falklands. This is after the Falklands War, serving at Mount Pleasant, and that was a challenge. I was involved with 2,000 servicemen, with Army, Air Force, and Navy. And it was a privilege to be a deputy commander of British forces in the Falklands. Falklands was a terrific environment, beautiful scenery, harsh weather, wonderful wildlife, and it was an interesting job.
Looking forward to your talk later.
Okay.
I think your uncle would be very proud, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's absolutely great to see you here in Crayford today, and we are a very historical area. But this is such an important event, and we're so grateful to have been part of such a historical event. Can you just tell us from your point of view how you get across to the young people, particularly today, the importance of this flight?
I think that the young generation of today need to have the lessons learned of what our forefathers had to contend with. The Alcock and Brown story is just a wonderful story of grit, courage, determination and skill and teamwork. And it's something that should teach everybody, young and old, that to succeed in life, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to be good at your job,
Yes.
and intermix and share responsibilities and know where your responsibilities lie, so you don't cross each other's paths, and you become the perfect partnership for success.
And it's the best of British, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, how over the years we have been pioneers because of the enterprise of individuals like Alcock and Brown,
Yes.
but others as well. It's just fantastic. It gives you a great feeling, doesn't it?
It does give you a fantastic feeling, and the fact that they knew the risks and they calculated and made adjustments to their own method of operations to overcome diversity. And it was harsh out there in those
They
early
were very
days.
brave, weren't they? I mean,
They were
you had
very
to be
brave. They were brave
to do such a
Yes.
pioneering thing.
But
When you think of the Atlantic today and we fly across it,
Yes.
you don't think anything of it. But when we've seen
Nope.
the plane,
But they had confidence in their plane.
Yes.
Also, Sir John knew the Vickers team before the war, although he didn't work for them. He worked for them after the war. As soon as he got demobbed, he went to Vickers and he was selected as their pilot for crossing the Atlantic. He had set world records across long distance flying, and he knew that the Vimy, who had won a competition at the end of the war for the British bomber, the new British bomber,
Yes.
and it won it by a margin because it was so powerful, it was so reliable. It had some fantastic engines in the Rolls-Royce engine. It was all British, and it was superb for crossing that Atlantic. It went on later on in that year, in 1920, in fact, to achieve the first aircraft to go from UK to Australia in a Vimy.
really,
In the same aircraft.
the same aircraft.
Well, not the same
Well,
aircraft.
not the same one, because
but the
that
same
landed
model
Ireland,
of
yes,
aircraft and the same
model.
not non-stop, of course, but it was just showed how wonderful. It took part in the UK to South Africa trip because it was a super aircraft in its day. And I think people here at Crayford and Bexley should be proud that Vickers had produced such a fantastic aircraft designed by Rex Pearson.
Well, of course, Vickers made Crayford. It was a small
Yes.
village
Yes.
before Vickers came with the guns and the cars and the aircraft.
Yes.
But it's not just the companies, it is the people like Alcock and Brown.
Yes, yes.
But the inspiration. And I
Yes.
think it's so important, don't you, that young people realise the pioneers
Absolutely.
were British,
Yes.
the pioneers really
Really.
did a fantastic job, and we're so grateful to them.
Yes, but the interesting thing is that, of course, we've forgotten the fact that both of those people, although they were pilots and navigators to the second degree, they were no one better, they were both engineers. Alcock was a mechanical
Right.
engineer, had become a chief mechanic after 2 years. He left school at 16, and by 18 he was a chief mechanic on a motor business in Manchester, and he was actually building aircraft. And that is tremendous. Brown was an electrical engineer, and he worked for Westinghouse, who came,
right, yes.
across from the States
Yeah.
to set up business in Manchester. They were smart people.
Yes.
They were gifted people in their disciplines of navigation and flying, but they were intelligent and smart.
Well, you must feel very proud, you and the family, that not only they remembered from their achievements, but also that you're carrying on to make sure that people
Yes.
remember.
Yes,
And one of the things about history is, and as I say, we have a lot of history in this part of the world because of our location, to just make sure that everyone realises the history
yes.
of our area, the history
History
of great people.
Absolutely.
And therefore we're so grateful for you
Yes.
to be going round and coming to us
Yes.
to talk about this so that we get a new generation, and
Yes.
some of us are not so
Yes.
new,
Yes.
some older generation
Yes.
people to come along as well and learn, because we knew about these great men,
Yes.
but we didn't know so
Yeah.
much of the detail.
Well, that's why when I retired from the Air Force in '99, I wanted to do something to expand the knowledge about Alcock and Brown, because they never got the justification and recognition that they deserved at the time. And I know that because my uncle died soon afterwards, he was dead by 6 months later.
That was terribly
That was a
tragic, wasn't it?
terribly tragic thing, and he had a lot more to give in aviation. But that tradition was furthered by his brother. My father was his nearest brother, and he took up aviation as well, and he had
so something in the genes of the family, you think?
There is a genes in the family. There was a natural ability, because we all three of us were natural pilots, and we didn't find it difficult. Yeah. We took to the three-dimensional world very, very nicely.
Yes, well, we're grateful. And then now in retirement, you can still carry on, but telling people the story of two remarkable men.
Absolutely.
And two men that we're so grateful for. When we go across now, and we go across the Atlantic, we have it very easy. When you think of what they went through on that flight.
Absolutely.
They had everything against them.
Absolutely.
But they did it.
But they did it. And they never thought that it would happen to aircraft. They actually believed that it would be flying boats that would be the next thing.
Right.
They actually thought that the future air transport for across the Atlantic was by flying boats, and unfortunately it never occurred. They did try to do it, but they were too expensive to run and too slow.
Yeah. A pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you very much for coming to us in Crayford and telling about your family story.
Thank you very much indeed.